Welcome to the newest episode of the PCM Podcast. I am Thomas, your auth writer. Today we're going to be talking about religion and all fun stuff associated with it. And today we have quite a fun lineup. We have me on the auth right. We have Paliacki on the auth left. Liquid Narrator on the lib right. And Anderviel on the lib left. So hopefully this shapes up to be well. So does anyone want to open up with their thoughts onto religion, and we'll just go from there?
I can start with quoting Camille Zola, the quote which the last stone of last church and last priest, something, but I don't know, that would be too edgy. We can actually, we have already discussed it, but we can also say to the listeners what are our positions, religion, and then maybe, I don't know, question. For example, I'm an atheist, and Thomas, you are?
I'm a traditional Catholic more than anything, but, I'm kind of straddling liberal and traditional, but I lean traditional. And Liquid?
Oh, as I said, agnostic. I think there's something, but I wouldn't say I know what it is. I think every organized religion's got some good parts to it, but I don't know. I think all of them just got some kind of dumb shit that just keeps me from saying this is what I believe. So, I just think you're Catholic, right? There's good parts to just Christianity as a whole, but there's also just I don't want to say dumb shit. Dude. That feels that disrespectful, but
no, it's fine.
Parts that keep me from getting into it. So, okay, one sec. Redmaker he just posted in the thing. He's not even near his home right now. Okay, he's not coming on.
All right.
Yeah, and Anderviel, you are?
I would say that I'm agnostic with certain eclectic tendencies. Insofar as I do believe that there might possibly be some sort of spiritual realm, something beyond just the immediate material world that exists as we see it. But I have not.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Looking over the various religions that I've seen, there's some wisdom within all of them, but there's also things that I look at where it's sort of like, okay, well, based on this, I cannot see this entire religion as the arbiter of cosmic truth, and I cannot believe that if this set of scriptures is somehow divinely inspired, or that there is some entity that deserves my worship that has indicated them in the words that they currently are. So I believe that there's a lot of good wisdom to be taken from certain religions, but similar to Liquid, I would say, on the whole, I am distrustful of religious institutions and also the dangers that can come from dogma.
I don't know if I'd say I'm distrustful of them. It's just as you were saying, there's parts of it where it's just I don't agree with this part, so I can't trust the entire thing, because if you believe it, you kind of have to believe in every part of it, which I just can't do. I wouldn't say I'm distrustful, because I do see the benefit I think quite a lot of organized religion can have on a society, and there are negatives as well, but I don't know if I'd say I'm distrustful, just more I don't think it's for me.
Okay, I'll say I'm distrustful.
Yeah, that's fair. I get why some people are distrustful of it. I think what I find weird with over here in Britain, the church is just I don't know how I'd put it, just weird and bows to quite a lot of far left politics for some reason. I don't know why, which is just
the Catholic one.
I know it's the Catholic one. It's like
the Anglican.
You're talking about the Church of England, the Anglican Church, right?
Yes, that one.
So technically, the Queen of England is the head of it because Henry VIII. Yeah. Henry VIII wanted to divorce his wife, and the Pope said no. So he was like, "Well, I guess I'm in a different church now, so I can be my own Pope." It's hilarious how politics can influence religion that way. But yeah,
Isn't it
Oh yeah,
also like very similar in dogma? Like basically, like the baseline which Henry took was almost entirely like Catholicism. Wasn't it like the case? It was literally like Catholicism, but I'm the Pope.
Yeah.
yeah. I think there's minor differences in certain like ritual aspects at this point. But at the time, at least, because the split was politically motivated instead of based on some kind of dogmatic reason, my understanding is that any differences sort of evolved over time, and it's less drastic than say, like the differences between like a Lutheran and a Catholic, or yeah. Anyway,
Yeah. No, I generally agree with that. I mean, to kind of lay out the bare bones of my argument, I think that an organized religion is kind of important because I don't, this isn't me being lazy, but it's just kind of an acknowledgement that there is 2,000 years of tradition and understanding and reading of the scripture behind me, right? And, you have very good thinkers like St. Thomas Aquinas, pardon, and the such, really like looking at the scripture and all this good stuff. And they come up with, fairly good interpretations of it. And you can really like piggyback off their interpretations and a lot of thinking and kind of in a pseudo-scientific way build an understanding and a much better understanding of the text. Whereas in a more disorganized religion, think like Protestantism, where it's like one church at a time, if the pastor leaves, like oftentimes the church just dissolves, right? That not always, but it can. And that's kind of my reason for organized religion because it's very stable. And you get good organized, thought out takes, and at least with the Catholic system, I mean, no institution with billions of members is going to be free from corruption. That's just unfortunately a fact. But with the Catholic Church, I think, it's important to note that it doesn't shift too often. Vatican II happened, and that happened in the 60s after a couple thousand years. Like, it essentially allows people to keep a rock of stability within their religion, and it quality controls what they can and can't see, in that, they're not going to get a terrible pastor, but, they're always going to have a decent experience, and of course they can go to any church in the world. That's a very big plus.
But at the same time, though, you're saying that it's stable and quite consistent, but at the same time, I don't know if I would get banned if I say what I want to say. Tanks can censor this out, but what's your opinions on the current Pope? Because I would say he's a Jewish shill. I'm gonna be as blunt as I can. He's a Jewish shill. He's like extremely pro-immigration and all that. Like,
Wait, explain me how's like being like, I understand that trads don't really like the current Pope. Like, he's obviously like much more like culturally left. I like don't see how it makes him a Jewish still though.
yeah, he seems like the most like Saint Franciscan I have ever viewed. So even though you might say, well, he's all about like income equality and like being nicer to people and accepting people that have traditionally not really been viewed in a positive light by the church due to certain for instance sexual proclivities that they have. And I do I would like to hear Thomas's opinion, but I don't think Jewish shill is necessarily the most accurate way to describe his positions.
I mean, that's what I'd call him, but
Yeah.
I don't know if we're gonna have to censor that out.
Yeah. No, I'm not sure I agree with all of the Pope's decisions, but I do recognize his authority over me and stuff. And, the Catholic Church has had some questionable popes before, right? And we've always found a way to recover, and we've always found a way to kind of maintain the tradition, right? And, the Pope has a lot of power, but in the end, over, the course of the next 20 years, and I'm sure with the next few popes, it'll kind of equalize, right? This Pope I kind of view like a statistical noise, like a statistical outlier, right? So eventually, once he kicks the bucket, essentially, and he dies, if Catholicism is kind of moving towards the left or whatever, it'll start moving that way. But I don't suspect it will. I really don't suspect. And, we'll get another more moderate, more traditional pope. And, the more traditional side will come back. But this could also be this pope, I don't know God's plan, man. I really don't. I don't pretend to. But, it could be a way for us to reignite the flame of traditionalism under us, because a lot of people don't like him, and it turns people more traditional. I think I read a study, or not a study, like a couple of seminary, which is like the priest training, essentially, in case you don't know, viewers.
Yeah.
But like the very traditional seminaries are actually getting a huge uptick in numbers, recently. And I mean, I heard about this through word of mouth, so take that with a grain of salt. But it wouldn't surprise me if the point of the Pope would be like kind of bring back a more traditional priest through kind of like a contradiction almost. So,
That's almost kind of really based, just to bring it
Well,
up so shit, just to get everyone back to tradition.
yeah, I mean, look, I don't know the plan. God knows what he's doing, bro. I really do believe in God,
I'd
and
agree
I
with
think
that,
he knows
yeah.
what he's doing.
Okay, don't you afraid of the thing with the Vatican, which that the Pope is also appointing the guys who will choose the next Pope, so he can in theory put a lot of people as cardinals who will agree with him, are much
Well-
more likely to actually elect someone who is also agrees with him.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure how the politics of priesthood plays, because in the grand scheme of things, I haven't been a Catholic extremely long. I've, been a Catholic for most of my conscious life. In other words, like past 14, and I'm still not over 21. So, the truth is, I don't know the politics of priests and how they're picked or all that. But I know that if the only way to get cardinals and stuff is to have them as priests, then bishops and cardinals, right? So, if there's a lot more traditional priests, then chances are, there's going to be a lot more traditional cardinals. And, the next election, next time it comes around, it's, the traditional pope is on its way, because just the statistics of it. And, I hope that the Pope isn't politically picking things. I really do. But, and because I won't assume any bad intent on his part, I'll say he doesn't. But, even just the statistics of that would kind of put a more traditional frame on it. So that's kind of why I'm hopeful, and that I'm not assuming he's going to do that. And, even if he does that a little, the statistics of the amount of traditional priests there are kind of going to overrun that. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
So can I?
Go ahead.
I have a question, which is, you made a very good point for why you think organized religion is better than disorganized religion, Thomas, which is, the stability, the access, I suppose, to unified, dogma, like the fact that, it allows for longer lasting communities. But I want to sort of say, and yet those are all very good points, that an organized religion, generally speaking, has better survivability. But I want to ask, well, what is, so, it lasts longer and it's more stable, but what makes it so that it being around is a good thing?
Yeah. So, I think the best way to tackle it is, I think that first off, religion is a very important thing, and I do believe everything in the Gospels happened So I do think it's important that we spread the word of Jesus Christ.
You're literal. You're only the Gospels.
Well, no, I believe in the whole. I believe in the whole Bible. But
wait,
so
Yeah,
do you know? Wait, do you take it literally, or do you think it's like a metaphor? There's some parts. Is that like some parts might be like a metaphor?
Yeah, some parts are definitely a metaphor. Like, for instance, I don't believe the Earth was created in 7,000 years. That's just not with the scientific fact, and it's just not the case. I've talked to priests about it. I'm like, because when I was coming to the Catholic faith, I was like, I'm not going to join a faith that doesn't believe in evolution. Sorry. And I talked to a few priests, and they're like, look, a lot of people do, but it's not against Catholic teaching to do this. Oftentimes, your science should reinforce your faith. So I was like, okay, fine. If that's the case, if I can roll with the science. In the parts that I know, because I am a scientist, chemist specifically, but that doesn't really come into conflict with Catholicism often. But if it does, I can really kind of side with the science, which I do like that. I don't have to take everything as purely dogmatic, like Adam and Eve. I don't think that there were just two people in the world, right? I think at some point in our very, very prehistoric past, we got the life breathed into us. Somehow, there came a point where we were like, aha. We kind of became human, like a jump happened, or maybe some type of jump in intelligence, or maybe we just awakened somehow. But, a lot of the stories you can't take literally. I think a lot of the stuff that happens in the Gospels, I take literally. Like I think Jesus walked on water. I think he multiplied the loaves and the fish. I think all that happened. But a lot of stuff can be taken as interpretation, especially in the earlier books, because those are kind of nebulous.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah,
but,
I get that.
What was the question I was talking about previously?
I was asking you to justify why religion is good.
Well, yeah, I think religion, much like culture, is our way of orienting ourselves in the world, right? It's like, so what are the fundamental principles that guide your life, right? And without those, you can kind of come off course pretty easily. Like, all it takes is one bad existential crisis, and you could totally derail your life if you don't have, like, principles in your core, essentially, in my view. Because I've been in that position before. And, with it, you kind of have this orientation that's always built into you. It's like you never lose your compass. You may not have a map, which sucks, but you won't lose your compass. So you're always going to have some type of way to orient yourself in the world, and religion and culture less so, in my opinion. It gives you a fundamental orientation into the world that is fairly useful. You aim for the most high thing, and it allows you to essentially, in my view, be a better person and more stable and more resilient, because you have a fundamental orientation that just can't be broken.
Okay. So it's basically like you claim that religion like reinforces maybe not the correct word, like the moral framework, right?
Yeah, it gives you a very strong moral framework.
May I ask, so my understanding is you can have a very strong moral framework with philosophically derived ethics.
Right.
And they don't have a large mythology that needs to actually be sort of selectively ignored in order to accept a modern, rationally understood, empirically clarified understanding of the universe. And so, do you have a justification for why religion is better than philosophically based ethics in terms of grounding somebody in virtuous conduct?
Well, first off, there's almost zero chance for them to be quote unquote debunked, or for somebody to philosophically change their mind on them. I think that's one of the important parts. But I think the most important part about it, and I think the biggest advantage you have, is to get into religion, you don't need very much philosophical schooling. And I suspect that the average person doesn't really care enough to put the effort into philosophically building their own moral framework. If you do, that's very commendable, and a lot of people do, and I respect them for that. But the truth of the matter is, most people don't. They really don't care that much about that type of thing. So the question is, how can we get, just from a practical secular stance, like how can we get a ton of people to believe in a good moral framework that's pretty close to unshakable, and that in a way that makes sense to them? And it's like, well, religion is kind of one of the natural answers to that. Just secularly,
Okay, but don't you like? There's then the problem of, okay, religion may be like not imposed, that's the wrong word, but like the it's like it's easier to understand to people, but then there's the problem that morals become tied like other things that don't really should have anything to do with morals. Like obviously, like the debate of a more scientific debate of well, is there God, and like it becomes like tied with this, and then we can look at full-on religious literalists by biblical literalists, and then like as you mentioned, like obviously a lot of Christians believe in evolution. Like I'm pretty sure there are more Christians who believe in evolution than there are atheists, like period. But there is still the thing of, okay, there are a lot of people who like there are not a lot, but like, there are still a significant amount of Christians who are literalists, and then like maybe you grew up a literalist, but then you start be like this aspect of your religion that has nothing to do with morals, if we're being honest, starts being questioned, and like and then as a domino effect, your morals that are maybe fundamentally good start to be questioned.
Right.
Because like, and maybe not even by the person, but by yourself. And like,
I'm sorry.
evolution is just the most simplest example, but like, is like the problem of tying morals to other things through religion, maybe not an intention.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
What's being talked about? I was gone for a sec. What's being discussed?
We discussed essentially like why to believe and the importance of religion in developing a moral framework, and they kind of questioned me on that.
All right, cheers.
Yeah. So, yeah, if on that, I think, Paliacki, you have a very good point. And in my view, that's kind of an argument for organized religion. Because a lot of these literalists, I mean, a few are Catholic, right? But a lot of these literalists come from, these radical evangelical communities, right? Those people you see on YouTube. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's absolutely hilarious. But like they go and they start like speaking gibberish or whatever and like convulsing on the floor. I mean, it's like crazy. You're like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" Right? But like that's kind of what happens when you separate from a very large rational entity that these literalists come about, because most literalists aren't like very strong biblical scholars, right?
Sorry to cut in. Homie's just about to join.
Ah, cool.
He could do centrist, so you'll just be a sec.
Oh wait, he's the pagan, right?
No, that's Brad Maker. Homie's one. He was on the second episode with us.
Homie, yeah. Too bad. I was hoping for a pagan in this discussion. Okay, go on.
Yeah,
he'll just be in a sec. There he is.
There he is. Howdy. Right.
All right.
So we're going to continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so essentially, without a big organized, I guess, head of a faith, you get these people who are just literalists and believe there's no other interpretation when, Catholic doctrine, I'm pretty sure, says, well, this isn't the only way to take it, guys. And this is kind of what happens when you have a fragmented scholarship. You have very lay people talking about the Bible and stuff, and it's important that everybody read the Bible, and all the lay people do, but without like very strong Catholic scholars and 2,000 odd years of tradition, these people are professional scholars, they're funded by the Vatican and stuff, you kind of get this subpar interpretation that doesn't look at everything by people who are non-professionals. It's kind of like asking somebody who just read a small intro chemistry textbook to run an experiment. You're like, yeah, you might be able to do something, but you're not going to be able to really appreciate the full context of it. And I think that's kind of what allows these big organized religions to have very strong takes, so to speak. It's that they can hire and have people on call that literally live this stuff and can have a lot of perspective. Whereas, these more fragmented churches, not so much.
I am completely lost.
Well, no, but it's about orthodoxy, especially, and I do have to agree with one thing with Thomas here, which is that the Catholic Church, especially in I'm going to say like the modern era, has been, as far as large organized religions of I can't speak for Eastern Orthodox, but west of that, the main sort of Western Christian churches, the Catholic Church has been rather flexible in accommodating advances in scientific understanding of the universe. Not, sometimes it takes time, and another question would be sort of like, well, does this mean that, like, what we currently understand of, like your understanding, Thomas, like in 1,000 years, if the Catholic Church says something that's 180 degrees to what is now, like, is your, does God's standard for what are the laws of being a Christian change over time based on, like, what the church says? I assume the answer to that has to be yes, because the Pope is, the manifestation of the will of God on earth within the Catholic Church. And so if he said tomorrow that we should all go out and be circumscellions and, assault people with clubs so that they kill us so that we can be martyrs to the faith, then until a new Pope comes and says that's not the case, that would be the will of God on earth according to the Catholic Church.
Yeah. I mean, kind of, right? I don't think it could ever go that radical, because I think after a while, the priests would kind of all come together and be like, guys, this might not be it. And, they kind of lead their flock differently and their churches. Although, I'm not sure if, maybe 1,000 years from now, right, if the church did change. I think it's important to note that one of the bigger things that I've been told in Catholicism is that science should appreciate, or your faith should be flexible and almost perfectly compatible with science. Right? It should definitely be reasonable that you can believe your faith and be, a scientist in any field all the way caught up and believe all the scientific literature. But the whole Pope going bananas thing, I actually don't know how that would play out, because there is something to be said that, the Pope is going to lead us in a good direction, but as I said previously, we don't know if that direction is that he's going to show us such a bad place to go that the next Pope is just going to clean everything up and it's going to be epic. But yeah, I guess that's the closest I can get to response from that. I'm not super sure how that would kind of play out.
Okay, and I apologize. I don't want to come off as antagonistic, even though, because of just the nature of where we're coming to this argument from, there has to be a certain degree of at least positional antagonism. But just to give you an idea of why I'm asking these questions is, when I was very young, I was, I think, in a Presbyterian community, and I took a very sort of logical view of sort of like, well, if God exists and God has, these things, then like for instance, if God is compassionate, there's the compassionate and the all-powerful, dichotomy that I believe Thomas Aquinas had good arguments for, but it has never gone away, because it's sort of like, well, if God is all-powerful and if God is all-compassionate, then why does, he allow for horrible things to happen? Either he doesn't have the power to stop them, or he doesn't care to stop them. And there's not really a good way, or I'm sure you can give me, a very sophisticated arguments for why, the existence of worms whose entire life cycle is infecting the eyes of children in Africa so that they go blind and suffer, And then like those lay their eggs that go into the water supply that then infect other children, and it's sort of like, well, couldn't we live in a universe where this was not created? Wouldn't that be a slightly more compassionate universe? Like, when the church has priests that like rape children, and then like the church leadership goes and covers it up, like, couldn't there theoretically be something? You can cover it all up with it's God's plan. God's plan is for people to suffer, and that's good in the end. And the story of Job is that in full. I'm not sure how many of you have read the story of Job, but if you look at it from a humanist ethics point of view, it's pretty disturbing, right? And that's the thing. If you're like, well, I think torturing people is bad, but if the creator of the universe believes that torturing people is good just so that you can say, I tortured you so you can know that you're a worm, and everything you do should be to worship me because I am all powerful and you have nothing, and you should be glad that I've done this to you. And I'm not going to give you back your original family that I killed, but you get a new one. You can just marry new people and have new children, and you should be happy with that. And as somebody who has more humanistly derived ethics, I find that deeply disturbing. And, from a religious point of view, one might say, well, you're just wrong, Andrew. You shouldn't find it disturbing. You should glory in the compassion of God smiting this person and killing his entire family. That is the beautiful glory of the Lord who has created all. But it's hard for me to incorporate that, and I don't think I even want to. And I guess my question is, I think a lot of people who are Christians just they don't frame it like that. It's sort of like, well, I don't really think about Job too much. I'm just glad I'm not him. But do you have any thoughts on how to reconcile? I mean, especially the Old Testament. It's like, that's really hard to reconcile. Jesus, I love Jesus. Jesus has great philosophies. I quote Jesus. He's a great guy. But when you get into the Old Testament, it becomes a lot more difficult to justify all of the ethical stances that the Lord God Yahweh takes in his actions. And do you have any thoughts on that, Thomas? Like, how do you reconcile that?
Right. I mean, I view the entire world as the body of Christ, right? So I think we're all called to suffer, and we're all going to suffer. That is the inevitability, right? We're all going to have to carry a cross somehow, some way. And, I know Jesus doesn't call us to a life of comfort, but he calls us to pick up the cross and go forward, right? When Jesus called Peter, Peter was crucified for spreading his word. I mean, Jesus didn't call him to pleasure and comfort. So I think that's kind of one aspect. But I also think that, all this intermediate suffering, as messed up as it sounds, right? I can kind of, to my way of rationalizing it is, part of it could be like an intermediate suffering that's necessary for the greater growth. The same way how when you're exercising, it can really suck and you can be in pain, you can get a nasty cramp and, the weight can fall on you or something, or you can get an injury. But the entire process of it is making you stronger and better. And lastly, I would like to point that, it's very clear that our world is fallen. Like, a lot of things are bad because we live in a fallen world with sin. So that's kind of my three ways of getting through that. There's like an intermediate suffering. We live in a fallen world, so it's obviously going to be flawed. And I also trust the big plan.
Can I make a point about something that Anderviel said about the parasitic worms and just in general people suffering?
Mm-hmm.
So what I was wanting to say was that, all right, let's say there's no suffering anymore. Everyone lives perfectly. There's nothing goes wrong. There's nothing that makes you sad. Then the good moments of your life kind of just lose their impact because everything's always good. You kind of have to have those shit moments of your life to get, and because you have these shit moments, the good moments are, I'm not going to say gooder, but they're better. You have to have highs and lows, because if everything's just a high, it ends up just being really just in the middle instead, because that's what you're used to. So I think it's part of that, but then as well when it comes to stuff like the child fucking people in the Catholic Church, that's more or less just down to, at least in my opinion, God giving everyone free will and allowing them to make that sin, which they will then be punished for later on for doing so. That's at least my perspective on it. So I think it's down to a matter of humans having free will to make these terrible choices, and as well just allowing people to experience everything from highs and lows on this earth. Or that's my opinion, at least on it. I was actually, this is a completely off-topic question for you, Thomas, though, but I think you're a Catholic. Are Catholics able to believe in like extraterrestrials, so like beings from other planets and all? Is that part of the Catholic? Like, are they able to believe in that, or do they believe that the only like real life comes from Earth and that's it? And I know that's really off topic, but I was just curious.
Yeah, I think mileage varies. I don't know exactly. I know personally, I have kind of thought about it, and I think that it all falls under God's creation. Adam and Eve don't have to be human. You know what I mean? Like, there can be another world's Adam and Eve. That there could be.
Have you heard about that? There's a conspiracy theory that Adam and Eve were aliens, and eventually like humans didn't start off on this planet, and then they came here because Adam and Eve were from a distant galaxy or whatever. Or it's one of the out there ones.
Liquid, to sort of elaborate on the point that you're saying, is the conspiracy theory is that Adam and Eve were sort of early proto-humans. The rib that was taken from Adam was actually his X chromosome, which was duplicated to create Eve. The angel that is outside of the Garden of Eden, with a flaming sword that can strike anyone within like eyesight, is wielding some sort of projected energy weapon. And that the Garden of Eden itself is some kind of psychological/biological research facility. It's a rather interesting reach, I think. But I just wanted to sort of give you that I have heard this, and the people do try to make sense of it in a rather interestingly extraterrestrially framed way.
Yeah, I had heard about it a while ago, so I can't remember every part of it.
With a response if you don't want to, but.
I gotta be honest, this sounds extremely shizo.
Well,
yeah, it's one of the out there ones.
But I do think, Thomas, again,
on this topic. What about Jesus? I mean, he did all those miracles with.
Homie, your mic's cutting out. Homie, your mic's cutting out really bad.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm in a hotel room and I got really sick internet. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Take that out completely.
I can barely make out what you're saying.
Yeah,
Parts
I
I
only
can
heard
duck
many
out.
that internet.
It's okay if you're not able to do it this week. It's no problem.
Yeah,
if there's technical issues, it might be better to
connect with my because I'm on my phone right now. Maybe that.
By the way, Thomas,
Mm-hmm.
I will say that my understanding, and it is a rough one, of the stance of the Catholic Church on extraterrestrials currently is, a rather reasonable one. That's more just sort of like not a solid stance, because there aren't extraterrestrials as far as we know yet, so there's not really any point in making a ruling about them, existing or not existing, or being part of God's creation. Or I assume there might be something in a papal bull about them, everything being part of God's creation, because that's a pretty safe bet. But yeah, so what you said makes perfect sense to me, and yeah, I hope Liquid finds that to be, or found what you said to be a sufficient answer for him.
Yeah, I'd say so. I was literally it was just curiosity about if there was an opinion on that from the church or not.
Yeah, I'm not certain of a hard opinion. I mean, I'm sure if you ask a lot of us, mileage may vary, as I said, but I personally am inclined to believe that they're all part of God's creation.
Do you believe there are extraterrestrials?
I'm gonna go. I am not gonna opine on it till I get some evidence.
All right. Okay.
I'm gonna assume not until we find them, you know?
Yeah,
But
that's
this
fair.
isn't like a definite no. It's like, well, I'm waiting for evidence, so until I get that evidence, I'm not quite gonna believe it. I'm gonna go with what we currently know, which is that there isn't. But
Yeah,
I'm very
that's
open.
an understandable perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I stand on that.
So can I ask you? Maybe I should stop asking questions because I feel like this is going to be like a lot of. You could ask me questions, Thomas. Like somebody can try to,
Yeah,
pin me to a wall.
Why agnostic? Why not pick side? A fucking centrist.
yeah. Why did you pick the centrism of religions, huh? Why not just go full balls to the wall, atheist or religious? Why agnosticism?
Does that apply
I
to me and Anderviel, or just are you asking Anderviel only?
Both.
All
Yeah,
right.
either way.
Ander, do you want to go first?
Sure. Or I mean, I got a long answer, so maybe you want to go first if it's going to be.
I guess mine is a bit long. I don't know how long you consider long.
Long.
I'll go first then. So, when I was like younger, and when I was in primary school, so that's like 4 to like 11. They have us like go down to the church and all that. Every was it every holidays end, or was it just Christmas? I can't remember. But like, we had like a priest basically come in, and essentially just as like they're making us do this. Fuck that. I'd been an atheist for quite a while just because like I didn't like them pushing this stuff. So it was just like it was like like what Vinyl usually talks about with the pendulum, where I just swung the opposite way because the school were trying to swing me in one way. It was literally just reactionary at that point. So eventually, so I spent like most of my life as an atheist, and then last year I just started to get like doubts about it because, like, as Andrew was saying, he was talking about the spirit world, and I've had slowly started to believe in stuff like that. And then I started to get doubts about atheism. So eventually, I did move on to where I am now, where I'd say I'm agnostic. But I believe in God and my own beliefs about that God, but I don't think any of my beliefs as a whole fit into any specific religion. I say probably closest to Christianity. Like I have quite a lot of friends who have just like told me you're basically Christian, but I wouldn't say so. So, I know it's the centrism of religion, but
Right.
yeah, I mean, I've not read the Bible, so I plan to at some point. So maybe after that, I might become a Christian or move, or I might just stick to agnostic. Being agnostic, I just haven't read enough of it to say I believe in this. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Andrew, you can now give your long answer.
All right. And I think I am going to slightly dispute the characterization of my agnosticism as the centrism of religion, because I think that my particular interpretation, not at the moment, sir, we cannot hear you.
We're talking.
For anybody listening, there is text being typed by our centrist who is trying to get his audio connection to work, and it doesn't seem to be working.
All right, I can hear something coming out of you now.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a voice, but it's something.
But to continue, using briefly touching on, for instance, Plato's Allegory of the Cave, right? Where you've got people who are sort of strapped into a position staring at shapes on a wall that is illuminated from behind them where they think the shapes of the world, but there are things, that they're not seeing that are creating these shapes, right?
Yeah, I know.
We exist in a world where there's a lot of stuff that we know why it happens, and then there's a lot of stuff that we don't really know why it happens, and then there's a lot of stuff that is so incompatible with what we know what happens that only exists in anecdotal evidence, which might or might not exist, that people go, well, obviously that can't exist because it doesn't gel with what we've figured out so far. And saying anything that exists beyond the material plane just doesn't exist. Because we don't have a current explanation for it, and that means that we never, there can literally not be any kind of divinity, is to me a little bit presumptuous. Just like somebody saying, well, evolution doesn't explain everything, so this book written by this one tribe that is believed by this one people obviously has the answers to everything. And everybody else who has a theory about, the divine inspiration for the universe is wrong because this book. That also seems very presumptuous to me. But, I mean, well then, in this universe, what do we got, right? And obviously, I suppose, it's sort of like rationality and philosophy are sort of, it's a very humanist thing, but it's sort of like, well, if you got to make tools for yourself, you got to make tools for yourself, right? And ultimately, I believe that, again, as, a lib, every person is responsible for creating their own moral framework for the universe. And there's a lot of wisdom to be gained from various religions, but there's a lot of bad crap in there too. And there's a lot of stuff where you look at the religions and you're like, I don't even know what you're trying to say here, man. I think I know what you're trying to say, and I disagree with it, and it's weird that it's in here in the first place. And, I mean, if I felt like going on a list of those, a lot of them are, within, I guess, the scriptures of Christianity. Because growing up in Texas, if you've got to defend yourself, that's the people that are coming at you. If I was living in India, obviously I'd have a better understanding of weird stuff that comes from Hindus. And I do live in Japan, but nobody really tries to throw their religion at you here. I'd have more of an understanding of that. But I do think that I don't have evidence that there's some sort of, supernatural powers, right? The CIA obviously, or not the CIA in joint combination with the Army, for instance, had Project Stargate that, with people who did like remote viewing techniques. Remote viewing techniques, actually, if you listen to the interviews, have similar ways of focusing attention as, for instance, like people in the Golden Dawn when they perform, ritual magic ceremonies, right? If you look at, tarot, geomancy, and other things like that, use random chance for divination, generally speaking, I don't think that the actual cards that come out, and this is the thing, there's actually completely secular understandings of why divination has any effect, and religious ones, right? So ultimately, I don't think anybody can really say with any authority whether there is a divinity or there isn't a divinity. At this point, ruling it neither way seems like blindness to me. I really wouldn't mind somebody saying, well, I think these guys have the right idea. Like, they say some nice stuff. My humanist understanding of morals meshes with theirs, so I'm going to go with them, right? I totally respect that. My problem comes from people who go like, well, right here, it says, gay people should die, so we're going to kill gay people. Like, right here, it says that, Jews bad, right? So, kill Jews. And then I'll be like, well, wait, you read the part in the scripture where, like, a woman walks up to Jesus and says, hey, Jesus, can you heal my child? And he goes, no, you're a Gentile. What are you talking about? Does a father throw the children's food to the dogs? And then she says, No, but if dogs are loyal and kind, cannot they occasionally receive scraps from the table of the children? And so Jesus going, well, yes, if I'm the father and Jews are my children and you're a dog, then occasionally you do get a scrap of grace. And he goes, good point, woman. Your child is healed. I don't think I know very many Christians that actually follow the words of Jesus as written in the Bible here as part of their philosophy of like the ranking of Jews according to Jesus, right? Like there's just people ignore so much of things that are inconvenient in all of their texts. Like Buddhists do it, Hindus do it, Christians do it. I mean, every religion, humans ignore the things that are inconvenient to them. And ironically, I think it's my belief that if there's a divinity who created the universe and has rules for us to follow, then we should follow them 100%. Like, if God wrote you a book that says this is how you're supposed to live your life, why would you do anything other than what's written in that book?
Oh, I can hear something coming through from you.
You hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
I hear you.
Finally! Fucking finally! Jeez, alright.
Yeah, you sound good now as well.
Yeah, you sound quite
I'm actually using the microphone now.
that's
I
cool.
connected
Alright,
from my
nice.
laptop.
Yeah, so I suppose you slightly just missed my impassioned defense of fundamentalism if there was anything worth being fundamental towards.
Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
I mostly agree, but I also think that a lot of the gospel, I mean, one of the big things that kind of is the problem with reading the gospels is that a lot of it, at least, as you said, a lot of these things can be taken as literal, but a lot of them are very flowery, poetic language, So it's kind of weird, and as I said, that's why I like the Catholic Church, because they'll tell me what's flowery and poetic language, and they'll also decipher like what's the truth out of the scripture, and oh, did this literally happen, or is Jesus kind of speaking in a metaphor to us? Because
Though, actually, I'm going to let somebody else talk, because otherwise it's going to be me like just poking questions at Thomas for a while.
Don't you see a problem of like it was brought up a couple of times of like Catholic Church, like Catholic Church, like it interprets and like it can like change its position and it can change its like interpretations. Like you kind of answered this, but like I want to specifically focus on this thing of like in an organized religion, God's words supposedly change according to the wishes of a black. No, okay, not like okay, I've like misspoken. Not like basically like the opinion that God has on something can change, and it so happens to fit the opinion of the leader of the church. Well, not always, of course, but like a lot of times. Like, isn't like this, for example, like maybe not even talking atheism against religion, but isn't like this is a problem of an organized religion?
Yeah.
Personally,
I think
I'm mostly like anti-church because, I mean, throughout history, people have been using the church to fulfill their goals and do whatever the hell they want under the guise of it's God's will. So I don't think that we should have like almost any trust in churches because they're run by humans and humans are flawed people fundamentally.
Yeah. And all this is true. No, all this is true. But to get to Paliacki's point, I'll say, and then I'll start interrogating because, man, I feel like I've been, responding a lot.
Yeah, interrogate me.
I'll interrogate you guys. Don't worry. I'll interrogate you. The interrogation's coming. But in response to Paliacki, I mean, I think I view the church's deciphering of the Bible closer to a scientific endeavor in that we're kind of trying to interpret God's words through his scripture, and we're trying to find what is true. I mean, we know a lot of things are true, right? But there are things that, like, we really haven't fully figured out. You know what I mean? Like, we haven't fully put the picture together. So, just like how we have a lot of good scientific theories, or we had some pretty bad ones that luckily were replaced, I kind of view it as our interpretations change, we slowly get closer and closer to, God's will and God's word as we get like new revelations and stuff, and as we begin to interpret, it's kind of an iterative process that brings us closer to God. And to homosexuals' point, I think it's
So
go on. Sorry.
no, continue.
Yeah. To homosexuals' point, I think your argument is an excellent argument against disjointed religions. Like, theoretically, like, the way the Catholic Church could be run, is the Pope is pretty disjointed from politics, and he just interprets and speaks to the Bible. And, if some random ruler says, oh my God, we're doing this for God's will, right? The Pope can be like, no, you're not. So, and that's kind of the beauty in it, in that you can get people, like with smaller churches, like, the Church of England, for instance. I'll pick on it a little bit, or like a smaller church, like, if there's like maybe 50 churches in a country.
Please pick on the Church of England. They deserve
Yeah,
it.
I mean, like, the Church of England, if the English king wanted to go to war, there's no scripture that's going to stop him. You know what I mean? Like, it's just run by a political figure, which is, fine, but at the same time, it's not the same as having, like, the Pontifex, who is supposed to be removed from politics and just deciphers the word of God, and he's in such a high position that no one can really threaten him or be like, hey, well, if you don't help me justify my war, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. He'll be like, all right, screw yourself.
Yes, but counterpoint, the Crusades.
Well, the
That
Crusades
was
were
mostly, like, led by the church.
Yeah, that is true, and there was a lot of human corruption there, and I agree that the Crusades may not have been optimal. But there is something to be said that there was like a huge Islamic expansion at the time, and Europe was kind of scared.
Not really at the time, but like a few hundred years prior to that.
Right.
But it's like part of the Manzikert, which was a pretty large, not Manzikert, but like Anatolia, which was a pretty large expansion. Like most of Muslim expansion was over by that time, and actually Western Europe wasn't that threatened.
Right.
Yeah, also, what was the fourth or fifth crusade where Christians started like killing other Christians when they invaded Constantinople?
Yeah,
Or-
I mean, that's kind of an awkward moment, I mean, the truth is that, like, we're never going to be a perfect church, and we're going to F up pretty badly. But, we're slowly going to iteratively get closer and closer to God's will, hopefully over time. And, at least now we don't crusade, and we kind of view it as a bad thing.
Like,
Also,
by the way, talking about, sorry.
no, continue.
About your answer, like this is not like really a next, it's not really a counterpoint anymore. Like I want to like clarify something. Like, you basically said that previous interpretations were possibly wrong, correct?
Yeah, they could be, or they're like a theory that may not have held up well under scrutiny.
Yeah. So, but with the religion and the way we interpret it, like, and if we believe in heaven and hell, then the interpretations become like very important because we base our lives on them. And if we base our lives on the wrong thing, do we go to hell? If you are just a common, I don't know how to proper terminology, but like a commoner, yeah. And the priest says you have to live this way, but this is one of those like theories that were wrong, the wrong interpretations. Do you go to hell then if you lived according to what this priest said?
Absolutely not. No, you don't. it's actually a sin to lead people into sin, right?
Well, what if the
But
priest thought that he was doing the right thing? What if
right.
it was really real?
I mean, I think there's some level of inconsistent, like, okay, there is some level of inconsistency in that, like, yeah, we're gonna kind of make a few mistakes and we're gonna mess it up, but you should still go to heaven because the truth is that you're following the church, at least from my understanding, that Christ himself established, and this is his essentially divine church that he established, and even if it makes mistakes, um it's generally going to go in the right direction, and you shouldn't be totally thrown astray by it. I don't know if it could be that serious, but let's say for the sake of the argument, suppose it was that serious to our modern interpretation. um the layperson still did what was best. Now, the person who might get punished is, say, if the pontifex, or the pope, right, ordained this and it wasn't God's will, right? Then he might be the first one in line for hell because he led the entire flock astray. But essentially God knows who does it, right? If the pope said something along the lines of, all right, guys, kill all these people, and don't listen to anyone else, and the faithful people do it, in the end it's going to be the person who told them to do it who's going to go straight to hell, because the other people, what the hell were they supposed to do? I mean, that's an extreme example, right? To go to the very extreme, I think at that point most people's morals would kind of kick in and be like, hey, this isn't what Jesus said, bro. But I think that the person who would get punished in such a situation like that is almost never the lay person. It's never the bottom person. But yeah, anything I missed?
No, I don't think so. But I want to take it through a more philosophical route, which is, I don't remember which philosopher said that, but it was about like a collective psyche, essentially. I think it was Carl Jung, but I'm not sure. So
Yeah.
my thought is like, what if we do have like a divine part inside of us, essentially just manifesting? So the existence of God essentially just exists because it exists inside of enough of our minds that almost kind of becomes real. Like how if you think about something enough, it might happen, or if you hear a new word, you might start seeing it more and more and more, almost like it's a simulation type of thing. So what if since like all the gods of all the major religions exist in some sense, and the religions that have the most people are the ones that essentially gain more and more power, and essentially giving it a feedback loop where the biggest gods actually start to gain power and start performing miracles and all of that. What I'm saying is that what if it's all inside of our minds? We actually do have the power to create it, essentially. I mean, it's really far off, and I'm not doing a great job at explaining it. Yeah, that's about it.
No, I get it.
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
I was
I get.
gonna
No, go on. Sorry.
I was gonna say it reminded me something Descartes had argued when he was doing his meditations. Was so he also was a believer in God, and his argument for why there was a God, it's called the Trademark Argument, and essentially what he argued was that, well, basically everyone on the planet has an idea of God. We all have we all. You're not going to find a person who doesn't understand the concept of God. It's pretty simple. Everyone has that idea. And his argument was that God had like implanted that idea into everyone's head as like a trademark. So like well, that's what he argued. I'm not saying he's right for what his argument is right or if it's wrong, but that's what he argued.
Yeah,
which I thought was quite interesting, and it was reminding me of what Homie was saying.
Yeah, I think it's kind of far off. I personally don't believe in that or buy it, but I do think that you know, just to briefly mention all of the religions because I know this might be a question audience member might have like, oh, what do you think about other religions? And yeah, I think that I'm not necessarily against all other religions. I think that other religions are just like a less complete picture, and as um, a lot of scripture supports, like if you never had the chance to worship God fully, and I don't know if this is the stance of the church, not super certain, but it might be that if you never had the chance to believe fully in God, and you still lived a good and ethical life, then you're probably going to go to heaven, right? And just because you don't have access to the full truth doesn't mean that whatever you believe is totally false. I mean, there's good things there um, that are in accordance. They're just not quite the complete picture. But if you would allow me to, um, let me kind of flip the script a bit here and start interrogating you guys, and
Fine.
specifically you, Palaacki, because you're an atheist. So I
Yeah.
kind of want to get your perspective. I know we spoke once or twice. We both kind of like science and stuff. But how do you make sense of a world that has no reason to make sense? You know what I mean? Like, if there was no like governing power, like a god, like why should the world make sense? Is it all just like a big coincidence that it all happens to follow a set number of laws? You know?
Well, if I'm being honest, like, if are you referring to the why this like okay? So, obviously, like we know that things exist, correct?
Right.
Yeah, and we
But some
obviously know that
philosophers would argue
things
that
that
things don't exist.
They need to touch
yes,
grass.
there are people who argue that.
There are actually
But and like we
ancient
know
Greeks.
that yeah, and we know that existing things interact, and like basically like if we get to the basic of the reality, there is like obviously the question of okay, who decide why things interact in a certain way, and like I'm not going to pretend to know the exact answer, but the problem is that there is no like and there are like like not many, but there are multiple answers to why these exact laws appear in our universe,
Right.
and like I and I cannot say like that I believe in any of them because like none of them are actually proven. It's literally like this is a problem. This is one of possible solutions. We have no proofs that this solution is correct. So I will not say that I believe in any of the solutions, and this includes the belief in God. I will not say that. Oh, obviously it's multiverse. I will not say. Oh, obviously it's like what's like
Simulation.
uh, basic law of physics. Like I don't, I'm not going to like push any of this, and will like say that I don't believe in multiverse until I get any real proof. I don't believe in I don't remember like Stephen Hawking suggested some explanations, and I don't believe in God. Like I don't
Right.
believe in any of the potential explanations. I know that there must be some explanation, and hey, maybe one day we will find a proof that it's specifically the God, and then I will be gladly change my opinion. But as is, I don't see any reasons to believe any of those, including.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that kind of does answer my question, and I bring it up because I really am a very strong believer that science is kind of presupposed by some religious understanding. I mean, in order to participate in science, you have to have a faith that, and all these people, these, scientism types who like, oh, I just believe in science. It's kind of hard for me to get it because it's good to believe in science, and yes, but at the same time, like science has a certain faith that the world is going to work a very consistent way. And, that in my mind, that's kind of presupposed by at least some semblance of a religious view that there are like, a set like set forces that can govern the world. And you know
I
the
I
so
wouldn't say that's really religious. Like, actually, I'd argue that it's a pretty obvious assumption, which is much more obvious to a person than the alternative. Because, like, we as people, we are like as humans are bound, like, our brains operate in a way that we always make like we try to find patterns, we try to find like connections, and so it's like. The basic of scientific method is kind of like no, not scientific method, like the basics of science of that we have to try to find something like it doesn't really have anything to do with the idea of well there is some like greater force, greater power that decides. It's more of well there must be some connection. Like, I don't really see the connection with between the science, like the idea of science, the basic like religious mindset.
yeah. No,
Oh.
sorry. Go on, Ender.
Oh no, I just wanted to ask because you said that you think that a certain level of faith in something is behind or underlying a lot of people who profess a scientific mindset. Like what? I mean, I'm not going to disagree that there's probably people like that. People who for them science is slightly a religious thing, but I don't think it's a necessity. And so I wanted to ask, like, what do you see this thing that you're professing exists as? Like, can you give me a little bit more information? Because I think I know what you're saying, and I think I disagree with it, but I don't know if I know what you're saying.
Right. So essentially what I'm saying is that like we have to have faith that the world is going to be consistent. And there's no reason for the world to be consistent. And I believe in a God that's going to essentially preside over everything and preside over all the forces that keep our world together. But there has to be like a faith in consistency. Right? And in my view, there's like no reason to believe that. I mean, if you look at the most primitive ideas of everything as people, we just say things come to, or like a very primitive form of physics, things stop moving because they're tired. It's like, how do you tell they're tired? Well, they just feel tired. It's like, well, there's no underpinning force there. There's nothing. Our first thought is kind of to randomness, right? And then eventually we kind of said, well, there's one God and one consistent set of rules that he created on the universe. And then, a couple hundred years, maybe 1,000 years later, we were kind of like, oh, so this God set up some rules and they're consistent and now they're measurable with mathematics. And then, science is born. That's kind of how I view it.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah. Go.
So I don't see, like, you see, I guess, a faith that the world is consistent, right?
Right.
And I see a null hypothesis, like a default assumption that, well, until I get new evidence, that the sun will probably rise tomorrow. But if the sun doesn't rise tomorrow, then a scientist would not go, oh shit, my faith in everything is destroyed. They'd go, oh, well, let's try to figure out why this is happening. And if, like, they pick up their microscope and the microscope, like, turns into ash in their fingers, they're like, okay, well, this is a new phenomenon. Obviously something has changed that has caused the sun not to rise and microscopes to turn to ash in people's fingers. And they would start to create theories about why causality is no longer existing. They wouldn't say, obviously science no longer exists because the faith of our existence is gone. And some of them might freak out because they're like, oh, well, this is so supernatural that obviously the supernatural exists, and throw themselves into religion, because not they have a crisis in faith in science, so to speak, but a crisis of faith of going from people who thought there was nothing to seeing that there might be something, and then randomly grabbing out at whatever something they think might exist. But, I mean, honestly, if you're actually a scientist, you would just take the evidence. I mean, like, all of the memories, for instance, to say something, all the memories that I have right now, I believe, are based off of things I actually experienced. I do not believe this because I have faith in it. I believe this because it makes the most sense right now. On the other hand, I could be an android that was programmed with these memories like 10 minutes ago, birthed out of a tube, placed here to be on this podcast, and I wasn't actually existing before this podcast began. The beginning of this podcast is an artificial memory planted into this weird biological machine. That is a possibility. I recognize it's a possibility because I cannot disprove it at this moment. However, assuming that it happened, or assuming that it happened would be idiotic. Going with the basic, like, let's just go with what makes sense from what we know. That's not really faith. That's just like hedging your bets.
Yeah,
In reality,
I mean,
God
what
actually
we
created this podcast.
Anderviel described this little like last Thursdayism, which is the belief that the universe started last Thursday, and we just start to exist with all of our memories and everything like that. That is an actual belief system that people actually believe.
I'm not going to agree with those people.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, I apologize for making it a little bit long, but I guess what I'm saying is I don't think that what you're seeing is faith so much as it's just we have to assume something in order to make any kind of prediction about the universe, which we sort of have to do in order to have like societies and schedules and, let's all meet on Sunday next week because, you assume there's going to be days between now and then. And I don't know if that should be described as similar to the faith that somebody has in, for instance, there being an all-seeing, all-knowing, all-powerful Sky Lord that created the universe, that sent his son onto Earth in order to then be murdered and bathe humanity in his blood to free them from the sins of the people that were placed in a situation that they didn't actually necessarily were people that existed, but humanity is damned because we suck, because we don't listen to God is the metaphor. I don't think that and assuming that the sun will rise in the morning are like both faith. I think one of them is faith and one of them is just, this is my understanding so far, and if something changes it, I'll change it.
Right. No, and I understand what you mean, but I guess what I point to is where did we first arrive on that axiom, and how did we, choose that was the best axiom? In my eyes, it's no coincidence that we just happened to arrive at that axiom, that everything is, consistent and all this, and under one set of rules, essentially, when we were believing, as in the West and Europe where science was developed, when the majority of people in that environment believed that there is one creator and one ruler who ordained everything. I think
actually, the European science was heavily based on more ancient Greek, ancient Roman science, which meanwhile was heavily based on actually on even more older
I think it
fields
was
of
the
science.
Sphinx and the Egyptians. I don't know if
and
Greek it's called Phoenix, but I don't know how it's called in English.
The problem is actually the roots of science go far beyond the first recorded monotheistic religions. There were still creator gods who are more important, arguably. Especially I know there was a creator god in Mesopotamia, and Mesopotamia is also I think it's a place where basically a non-geometry math was born, if I'm not mistaken. There was also obviously the main god of Amun-Ra in Egypt, and this is the birthplace of geometry. And then it came to Greece, who then some expanded it while still being pagans, and then of course it was rediscovered and improved some by West already Christian West.
Right. No, and I do generally agree with that, but I think that those primitive forms of science fell short as a kind of product of their culture not being ready or not having the basis to accept like a one set of measurable rules hypothesis, more or less. Like, essentially, my question is this: if they already had, and I don't deny that our science is rooted in Greeks and Romans and the Egyptians, right? They absolutely contributed, and I'd be a fool to not say so. But a lot of what they contributed was also philosophical, which does also underpin the church, but that's another conversation or subtopic. But like, I guess my question is this: like, if it was able to, right? If it didn't need it, and the Greeks, Romans, all these people were really like going into it and trying to get it, like, how is it that they didn't over those hundreds of years like arrive or like get the scientific perspective widely adopted? Like, because you need a society to believe in science to kind of have it get off the ground. Like, if you have a couple philosophers believing in it, then I mean, it's next to useless because nobody uses it and everyone still lives in mud huts, essentially. Or, whatever's next, one step up. But, like, even so, like, how, their science wasn't really predicated on there's one set of rules. It's like, well, we're going to try to measure what we can, and other stuff is just going to be random. Whereas, like, as we come to the more Western school of science, our more modern school, we're like, well, everything has rules, and we assume everything has rules, and we're just going to do our best to measure, and eventually we're going to find those rules. I guess that's kind of the jump I'm talking about, in that we now assume that pretty much almost every phenomena has rules that we can observe and quantify, and that is the birth of Western science. And I think that part, that jump, that very important jump that allowed us to study like all sorts of wacky behavior, it comes from Christianity, in that there's one set of consistent things. Did that make any sense?
My one,
But Christianity was also,
I assume,
It made some sense there.
yeah, I won't say that Christianity is also in some sense anti-science, because say the Dark Ages, they would just kill scientists and they would say that they were speaking out against God. It had to take like Da Vinci and whoever to dig up corpses and start performing surgeries on corpses in order to get modern medicine.
Right.
I don't know if that's outside of your point, if I misunderstood something, but I don't believe that like religion goes hand in hand with science in the sense that we are talking about.
Right. What I mean to say is, like, the religion, and any monotheistic religion, arguing from a purely secular perspective, any real monotheistic religion was kind of a prerequisite for science, in that, in order for science to be adopted as we know it now, where we try to quantify everything because we believe everything is consistent with a set of rules instead of just, chaos and it just happens because it wants to happen. You had to have some type of monotheistic idea in everyone's mind for them to accept that and be like, yeah, actually that kind of makes sense. What the church did to early scientists is, not quite good, and I don't think it was a good thing. A lot of things that the church has done, I mean, we're apologetic for it. We're not like, yay, we're so happy we burn people alive or something. Like, or hey, I listened to Bishop Barron the other day, one of the bishops, very popular online. He's like, yeah, we didn't really have our best moment when we did what we did to Galileo. Like, that wasn't the best moment in the church's history. So, we kind of did fuck it up to points, right? But I think that framework that the church put onto the Western world was necessary for our modern conception of science.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so you mentioned monotheism as being important for this. So I just want to ask, like, do you feel that Chinese civilization, say, like, up until, I don't know, the Boxer Rebellion, did not, like, when people were writing, like The Art of War, when the Confucians were putting together, ideas of sort of like what the 5 virtues are and the relationships within people that allow you to create society, when you had the 100 schools of thought, that came about before the Qin Emperor, where people were putting forth, beliefs of like this is why this functions, like this is how we should look at like this way of looking at the universe. That none of that was, I mean, obviously was not empiricism, as like Roger Bacon sort of laid out early on in England. That then became one of the main ways that like informed how we currently do science. But I guess like would you say that like all the engineering and all of the societal analysis and all of the philosophy of how the world works that was in, and I use China for as an example because it is a large, highly developed civilization that is not monotheistic, is not scientific.
I think it's kind of so. You said the Confucian thing of like 100. What were they called?
Well, the 100 schools of thought period was one before the Qin Emperor unified China, where it was just, I mean, it was like ancient Greece in terms of just like everybody having different lenses where they were using reason and their understanding of various functions of the universe to try to come up with philosophies that defined how things work. Which again, Greece had a huge amount of. If you want to talk about like the Cynics, the Stoics, and like virtue ethics versus consequentialist ethics versus not coming to my deontology. So I bring up China just because a lot of times conversations like this can be extremely Eurocentric, and it is useful to be like, hey, not everybody's a monotheist.
Right.
Even if
most people on here are Eurocucks, though, so most of the time conversations end up being about Europe just because that's what most of us are familiar with.
Yeah.
One American, but then I'm assuming the rest of us are all European.
Yes.
Because I am, and I know Homie is. I don't know where Thomas or Paliacki are from.
European?
Oh, is he? Okay. I don't know about Thomas, though, but...
Thomas, I don't know.
Yeah, American.
Okay, so 2 Yanks and 3 Europucks. See, that explains why quite a lot of the conversation ends up being about Europe and America, is just because that's what we're familiar with. I'm sure you've got more of understanding of like Japan, for example, with Ander, having seen you live there, but none of us are particularly familiar with that. So that's just why these conversations end up just becoming about Europe and America. It's literally just because that's where we have to be from.
I realize that, but this is similar to, for instance, if, living in the Middle Ages in Europe, it was like, well, obviously, the further you go north, the colder it gets, and the further you go south, the warmer it gets, and this is a universal law of everything on this planet. And it's sort of like, no, if you go to a different hemisphere, it's different. It's very different. You should go to a different hemisphere and realize that the thing that you thought was a universal law is not. And this is why I bring it up, is sort of if it seems like monotheism is necessary, it might seem like that in the Western European frame of reference. But if you bring in other frames of reference, is I think a useful question to ask.
Yeah, and that's a very competent question. I think that now that I've had a little second to think about it, I think their thing is almost scientific. It's scientific in that they're trying a lot of things and seeing what works. But I think the hitch that doesn't make it scientific in my mind is that if they did all these things, right? Let's say they ran all these experiments, then they wouldn't have one unifying or attempting to be one unifying theory of the behavior of things. They would just say, well, this is how whatever. Let's say fireworks and water wheels or something. I don't know, something arbitrary. So they're like, well, fireworks work this way because this school of thought says this, and for fireworks it just happens that this school of thought does this. And then, for water wheels, water wheel school says this, and it, happens to follow that. And, they may not look for the underpinning connection. I'm not super certain. But my first question to ask them would be, were they looking for a way to bridge these schools? Or were they just like, oh, these schools work and that's that?
Yeah, a lot of the things actually did. Well, this is the thing. The 100 schools of thought, ended, and then there was a lot of unification of schools of thought, similar to, again, in Greece, right? Where, the first philosophical school was some dude saying everything is water. Not literally, but just like the principle of water being changeable and mutable and like not fixed in place is the philosophical starting point of everything in the universe. And then people just, different generations do things. You can see this in, for instance, psychology, which not being moored in easy to quantify and easy to solidly measure things, like, is actually sort of similar to philosophy in terms of how it came from psychoanalysis, and you've got like cognitive versus behavioral versus humanistic models of psychology that are literally like different philosophical schools. Is that a lot of it is, you have like a generation that people, look at what came before them and posit different things about what that means. And then the people that come next try to pick from various different schools and sometimes synthesize them or sometimes go off in a different branch. And I mean, this is even true within Christian thought, right? Like you've got, for instance, the Gnostics, who aren't always even just Christians. That's Gnostic belief is something that crosses actually a lot of borders. Or like, let's take the Cathars, right? Like the heresies within the Middle Ages are numerous. And most of the time when a heresy popped up, these people were not digging up some text written by some like crazy monk who existed at the forming of Christianity. They came from people who were in a Catholic situation where one person went, well, what about this? Isn't this better? And then gathered a group of people that went, yeah, no, that makes a lot more sense. Luther was obviously the most successful of the, I don't want to use the word heretics, but, people that...
Yeah. I gotta go for a sec. I'll be back.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, so to me at least, I though I will agree with your sentiment that, China was not like the most scientific in certain ways, because a lot of the times it was more based on philosophy, just like in the West, up until we got into, empiricism and making everything quantifiable and look based off of evidence. A lot of things were based off of philosophy. Even early chemists early chemists were generally that came from alchemy, but alchemy was a philosophical system based off of an understanding that had to do with the purification of the human soul being similar to the way that you could purify metals. Right. And then physicists were called natural philosophers. They literally studied the philosophy of nature. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is I will agree that like, these ancient schools in China were not scientific in the sense of like a modern empirical sense, but they were just as scientific as the roots of science in the West, of natural philosophy, of alchemy, of people looking into the nature of man by examining like what people said before them, what thoughts about it existed, and trying to use their reason to improve it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I agree, but I just think that people who are very polytheistic are probably going to run into a ceiling, I think. And, until that ceiling is done in by a good monotheistic religion, I don't think it's going to, you're going to be able to advance past a certain point.
Wait, so you believe that about the ancient Greeks?
Why? Like, okay, like I understood that the idea that a single deity created a single set of laws. Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like as I mentioned, like for example, in like Mesopotamia, they still believed that there was like a god that like created the world, and he wasn't a single god. Like there were multiple, but he was the one who like created it all. So why can't we say like why can't they reason that well? He probably like created some set of laws for why water freezes over a certain temperature and why it starts becoming the steam at some temperature. But like I don't really like. Maybe there is an argument that there needs to be belief in some there's something that can like impose a set of laws, and I'm not sure that I agree with this. But like even like accepting this, I don't really see why specifically monotheism is the important part.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just characterize it as monotheism, but essentially where there's one head honcho god that tells everything that happens. Some people might consider Catholicism quote unquote polytheistic because there's like angels and archangels and stuff where, God's right hand man, essentially. Um, or henchman, but that kind of has a bad connotation. But like, I think, you also just needed a cultural advancement and some time, and you needed time for that to bake in, and there were other factors that were necessary for the scientific revolution to come out. But I think monotheism is probably a prerequisite for it, or some form of it. What I've characterized as monotheism, where there's one head honcho that puts down all the rules. And if you believe, like for instance, the Greek pantheon, and I know they taught it a lot in American middle schools and elementary schools, like they believed that certain gods control certain things, and they would fight all the time. And it's like, how are you going to get one set of rules from a bunch of gods fighting? Like, maybe tomorrow Hades is in control of the something, and then the next day, I don't know, Zeus is, or something crazy like that. It's like, well, how are you going to get one set of rules if everybody believes that, there's multiple gods and multiple powers? So I think what I've characterized as monotheism is kind of necessary in order for you to build that faith and really actually believe the axiom that, everything is going to be consistent day to day. Like the rules of the universe are going to be consistent day to day.
Can I come in for a moment?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure.
Feel free to start groaning, because even though I enjoy this, I realize it is getting a little bit.
Yeah, it's getting a little gritty, guys.
Well, that's the thing, and I do. It's one of the reasons why I wish the pagan had come, is because having just one person who's a believer here does make it a rather like one-sided. Well, not one-sided, but weighted conversation on the other end, and I don't think that's good.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I do also feel it would be like a disservice. So I was like, oh well, there's too many dudes here, so I'm just going to shut up and sit here and not say anything that I think is relevant to the conversation. So next time, bring like pagans, Muslims, Buddhists, Taoists.
Yeah.
Don't
let's
take
try to get into
Confucianism,
diversity.
because Confucianism is not a religion; it is a philosophy, and anybody that says it's a religion is making me angry. But
People who believe that a monkey statue came to life and traveled here, I don't know.
What?
Bringing on Jews probably isn't a very smart idea, just based on the amount of anti-Semitism.
Yeah, like the podcast started with an anti-Semitic remark. So
My God.
I'm going to go ahead and say then we should probably be bringing on a lot more Jews until people stop being so anti-Semitic.
If you read the
Like,
general,
if
the
it works-
anti-Semitism's never ending. It's always just going to be there.
Yeah, we should-
But I did.
And to be fair, I'm not one causing it, so I can't say much.
Yeah, be the change you wish to see in the world, my friend, Gandhi. Follow Gandhi on
Based,
that one.
and I'm going to agree with Thomas on that one. Similar to Immanuel Kant, who, ironically, despite the fact that he's considered sort of the epitome of reason in philosophy, and wrote one of his a critique of pure reason, which is not critiquing pure reason, but writing a book that is a critique based on pure reason, is considered like one of the most important books in all of philosophy. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that when he read David Hume's opinions on sort of how man is just a bundle of perceptions and emotions that our rationality rides on like a beast, and that like there isn't really any sort of, I guess a lot of his stuff had to do with, or Hume's things were rather irreligious, and I was reading about how Kant sort of felt that the immortal divine creator of the universe needed to have like rational laws that he laid down that were the spindle upon which everything spun. And so he's a philosopher who, in a way, was motivated by his Catholic religion to write this philosophical tome of reason, and I'm only bringing it up because the main thing he talks about is the moral imperative, which is sort of like how to devise moral laws, and one of them is universality, which is that your actions should be ones that if everybody in the world did it, it would be good. And thank you, Thomas, for making it a Gandhi quote, but I agree with that 100%, and I will fist bump you for that. Yeah.
Is this maybe a hot take if I say that I actually really do not like Kant?
Oh, I hate Kant too. Don't even get me started. I hate Kant, but
I just find him extremely pretentious.
Oh, he is, sir.
I have the issue of all philosophers is that they always just come off as pretentious, but Kant is like the worst for it. There is no one who's worse for that shit than him, man. I just can't stand it.
I mean, dude had a big brain, though. I mean, you got to admit he had a big brain. He was pretentious as hell, but he had a big brain.
Yeah, he did, but I mean, there's lots of people who have big brains who I would say are kind of fucking retarded, but
Yeah.
yeah,
That is true. No, I mean, I personally am not I don't like philosophy. I got scarred by one class in college, and I had to explain some ideas in chemistry that got rid of a few of or science, I should say, natural science. It also kind of belongs to physics and all these fun things that were like, well, if your theory worked, then why does this happen? And the professors did not like that.
Yeah, I will agree that I've never had a philosophy class that I liked. Most of the philosophy I picked up that actually made sense was just reading about it. Philosophy classes generally seem to be, bad experiences all around. Hey,
Philosophy kind of
But
like
I
religion has that like sense of understanding whatever you want to understand, taking from it whatever you feel like speaks to you essentially. There are some fundamental ideas, but there is always room for interpretation, I feel like. So if you have somebody teaching it to you, of course you're not gonna like it because leaves that part that you get from reading it. I'm sorry, cannot. My English is just not working today. It did not come to the recording.
It's fine.
I literally have a philosophy exam on Wednesday.
Ugh, I'm sorry.
Oof.
Yeah,
good luck with
Sorry.
it.
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't like philosophy classes much either. But that's more or less just because most of the people in that class are really pretentious douchebags, and I can't stand any of them. It's less of just not like in the class. Like the teacher is pretty good, but yeah, just the people in that class are just fucking douchebags. I'm not gonna lie. And then one of them is gonna somehow find this, recognize my voice, and I'm fucked. But
Hey, by then the grades will be
Oh,
out. So
wait, what's he going to do? To write an essay on 6,000 words for why?
no, but I've got another year of school though, so someone's gonna find this, and then it's just gonna come out. Oh yeah, I just called everyone a bunch of fucking douchebags. What the hell?
oh
What,
well.
they're going to do Bournemouth
People at
test?
my school have already tried canceling massive finger quotes me before, and it didn't work. So who cares?
I think you need to indicate that there is one person who is not a douchebag in your class, and then that can just be like sort of Schrodinger's decent human. That any individual in the class can believe they are the one.
Actually, you know what? There is a few people I would say are all right in that class.
Oh, there
So
you
yeah, there you go. Schrodinger's douchebag.
Let's go.
But-
Off on a technicality, baby.
Yeah. And as I said, I did say the teacher was all right, so that part's all secure. But I don't really, admittedly, I don't really care if they know I think they're douchebags or not. So.
Mhm.
Seriously, what are they going to do? Be pissed at you?
They already
Look at
are.
you. It's really especially like what are they going to do?
Yeah, cope and see.
Yeah,
That's what they can do.
they likely already are pissed at me, so I don't care.
Yeah, but I kind of want to talk about Homie's point where he did mention that philosophy classes and religion classes are like both kind of painful. And surprising as it is, I kind of agree with that. I think that these things are a very personal thing, and kind of to bring us back to topic. But I kind of want to get your guys' opinion on like religious schooling and the such, because I actually never went to religious school.
Okay, so I actually do have somewhat perspective on this. I didn't go to like the school. It wasn't like a Catholic school I went to, but like as I said, when I was in primary school, they did try like push religion to an extent. Like they had like the local reverend come in and tell us about the Bible and all that. And I can tell you from that experience that pushed most people in that class onto atheism, because
Yes.
I mean, it literally did to me.
They're exactly the same.
Like, that's why I was an atheist for so long, was literally those classes. So in reality, it did Christianity absolutely no fucking good whatsoever. And I only became agnostic through like personal beliefs and research myself. So yeah, I 100% agree that religious classes are fucking terrible, and I'm sure there's some good teachers of religion out there, but I'm sorry, like they're not very good the vast majority of the time, and that's from personal experience. So yeah,
it's a tough line to walk, right? Because you have to because people who teach religion are saying like, hey, I'm teaching you the truth, but also like they can't super hard enforce it on you. Like, I think the way an analogy is like, I'm sorry, Paliacki, if I interrupted, I'll let you go right after.
No, yeah.
But like, I think the best conversion or anything or any type of convincing of people for religion, and I've seen this, trust me, is never to say, well, this is the truth and you're going to have to deal with it and like hold some power over them. And that's the worst way to do it in the modern age. Maybe like 1,000 years ago, it could have been work because you literally could do nothing about it. But nowadays, you can just move to another city and these people essentially could have no power over you. And that's just fine, right? So I think that, and as a practical note to anybody who is trying to do religion or convert, and I've kind of adopted this, is you have to kind of take on the role that Jesus plays. And they say Jesus doesn't barge into your heart, right? He gently knocks, waits outside, and waits to be let in, right? You're not supposed to FBI open up, pull down the door, and super hard enforce it. And I think people who do that are just really doing me as a Christian and you guys as people who could see the faith better, like a huge disservice, because they're gonna quash our numbers and they're gonna like also get people militantly against us. It's like a double whammy.
Yeah.
Like I completely agree. Yeah. Okay, first of all, like I think to start with saying that I also had like this stuff, starting in a school, and yeah, I can also confirm what Liquid said that, it's like it probably pushed a lot of people away from Christianity. Actually, I can't say that I was like very religious even before that. Like actually,
yeah, I wouldn't say I was either, but it just pushed me in the opposite direction.
Yeah, like kind of the same, if I'm being honest. And I feel like it also feels wrong, like even on the level of like religion shouldn't be a thing that's like taught in class. So it should be really a much more personal thing. Like it should be like a thing like maximum, like the highest thing that's like above of a individual, where religion is touched on, like ignoring the religious community is the family. Like Like maybe you can talk like maybe I can tolerate like the idea of like your parents like talking with you about religion, but like teachers in a school, that's like it's really it feels dirty even for the religion because it's like some weird not commodification but like
I think I've
I can't
mentioned this
really fully
before.
explain, but
Yeah,
Huh?
it's just not the right time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the only person I even know who goes to like an actually religious school is an atheist. So, because she goes to a Catholic school, and yeah, apparently no one in that school gives a shit about religion. So I think that just shows the absolute state of religious schooling in the first place currently, where yeah, it's just doing no one any good. So
Yeah.
they should probably just stop with it at this point.
Yeah, or be more gentle because I think
Yeah,
it's ironic. I was the only person who wasn't in my family. I have like four, one sibling and two step siblings, but in my family, um, like I was the one person who was pretty much raised devoid of religion, right? Like no religion was pushed on me. I can't even remember going to church as a kid. They said apparently I went and I was baptized and that's it. Um, but
I was
like
baptized, and that was about it as well.
yeah, which is fine. I'm okay with baptisms. Like, it's not a huge deal that you're baptized and an atheist, like, it's fine. But, I think that I think it kind of speaks to it that, the most devoted one is the person who found it by themselves. So really for any converter or people who want to convert, the it should be done essentially in the home and maybe with friends talking about it, but not really hard enforcing. That's just a losing strat. So I guess it's time for us religious people to kind of update the playbook, so to speak. We gotta figure out how to come up with better conversion tactics for the 21st century, where there's a lot of information out there, and you can, if you don't want to listen to it, you don't have to.
Well, I think, especially seeing the number of religious people has gone down, I do believe that the religious folk actually do have a pretty good point to convert people currently, because specifically just the opinion of atheists is so low currently that I think they're in a pretty good spot where you can just argue, you don't want to be like these people now, do you? And you can just show a picture of like the neckbeard, fedora wearing atheist. Just show any post from r/atheism, and yeah, there you go. Automatic.
I know I wouldn't be showing them. I wouldn't be telling kids about the existence of Reddit because they then may want to check it, and then they
That's
like,
true.
no, you don't understand, unknown. White men are evil. Christianity
No.
was created by Hitler.
Here's the real thing you should do: show your kids 4chan.
Wait, hold on. Homosexuals testing his mic. Can
All right,
can he
I
speak?
can't hear him.
Can
Speak?
you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
there.
There you are. You're fine. Try
Right,
again.
great.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Just keeping the housekeeping in order.
Yeah. Though, actually, I was about to say something about this isn't a European thing, but at least in America, outside of the organized religious schooling, it's important to note that there is a lot of unorganized religious schooling, specifically homeschooling, where people pull their children out of public schools. Generally pull them out of public schools. These, sometimes private schools. In order to make sure that they have a religious education. When I say a religious education, I mean one that is devoid of any kind of science or empirical evidence that goes against a fundamentalist Protestant understanding of their interpretation of the Bible. I don't really know many people who do religious homeschooling that aren't Christian. They might exist. And I also think this is more of an American phenomenon than a European one, generally speaking.
I think so too.
In terms of demographics. And I just want to bring it up into the conversation. I don't know what the numbers are. I feel like people that go through Catholic schooling generally are, it's less of a militant, intense religious education. I mean, obviously, a Catholic school. I haven't been to one, but it's steeped in religion, but it's not.
Not necessarily. As I said, I know someone who goes to one, and yeah, apparently they just don't give a shit about religion, barely talk about it.
It's probably like
So
Okay.
not
kind of like
necessarily.
the Greek system. Because I think I've said this before, but here in Greece we also have like religion as part of the curriculum. I think we even do like religious testing even in the finals. Not now, but back in the day we used to do that. So it was, I feel like, kind of how you are describing Catholic school. It was there as a subject, but it didn't really intervene with the other subjects that we had. Yeah, that's it.
So yeah, we have like religious education over here as well, but no one really chooses it, and it's for like, it's not just Christianity; it's all of them.
We also had that in the final grades of high school. We actually
Yeah. No.
talk about, I think, Muslims, Buddhists, and I think some of the Chinese stuff, but don't remember.
Right. Yeah, I mean, classes should talk about religion in some respect, but you don't have to be a converter in the classroom. I don't think the classroom is the appropriate place to do it.
But I feel like have
Yeah.
at least that subject to familiarize people with it, to give them a contact, a first contact, let's say, with religion, and let them explore it by themselves.
Yeah.
I will actually disagree. I still think it should be kept. Still, like with school, it's like a lot. It's like obviously kids from different backgrounds come here, like teachers from different backgrounds. I think like trying to like min max it to be in the best and most efficient way that doesn't like hurt anyone's feelings and is useful. I feel like actually it should be like mostly from within the family, the basic like understanding of what religion is. Yeah, there can be like counter argument of, well, then it's like you don't really explore religion, then you just like get what your parents give you. Like like I don't know, trying to do some subject about religion in school, just like I don't really see how it can realistically like, work. It will be like extremely neutered, extremely like min-maxed to the point, like and you will like to the point of you still want to make it perfect. So I don't see like how it can work at all.
Yeah. I don't think it's I think you can talk about it and talk about it for history purposes, but I don't think
Yeah,
it's
like maybe as part of some other subject. Like of course you can talk about religion, but not make it as a subject of an
right.
entire.
I remember after the Florida passed that the anti-groom bill, there was quite a lot of people, especially on Reddit, who were arguing that if we can't talk about our queer sex in the classroom, you shouldn't be able to talk about your religion. And I immediately just like thought to myself, like, you know the meme of your terms are acceptable. It was literally just like that.
Yeah.
Or,
I
yeah,
mean, literally, that's what we advocate for, man. Like that's pretty much what we do already. Absolutely. Fuck it. Why not? I mean, look, the truth is how even just being pragmatic, if I'm like, first off, homeschooling is cringe, right? Let me just get that out of the way because I think
okay, no, I would disagree with that.
I mean, like, it can be kind of cringe because,
It
like,
can be, but it also, I would when I'm older, I want to homeschool my kids because I do not trust public schooling.
right? No,
It's
I
a
mean, I
horrible
think, but
idea,
like
personally.
fundamentalist homeschooling,
Wait, what did you just say? I didn't hear what you said.
I think it's a horrible idea because, first of all, you do actually know like what the teacher is saying to your child, but I feel like in some way it kind of isolates the child, and it will make it harder for the child to fit in society later on in life. Even though
No, you just have them. You have them just do other stuff outside of the school, man.
yeah,
but
you have them be,
school is the main way that people socialize. with extracurricular
That is
activities, he's going to be like the odd one out, essentially.
that is true. There's
I
some
mean,
truth there.
I think there's pros and cons to it as a whole, but it's just down to the fact that I do not fucking trust the public schooling system one bit.
No, I mean I was just speaking to like religious type schooling, homeschooling.
Oh right, okay. I
like,
was just talking in general.
No. Homeschooling is fine. Like I'm considering homeschooling my kid if I have enough time because I would like to teach them a lot of math and science early on because I think public schooling is horrid with respect to math and science. It's pathetic. I know people who graduate college who can't convert meters to kilometers. It's fucking pathetic. But
I failed maths twice. I failed once, and this I might have failed again. I don't know.
no,
So
but,
yeah, I can back that up.
like just teach them properly, which I might, but I don't know how much time I'll have in the future of my life. That's like 10 years down the road, so there's no way to know. But, I think it's important that we ensure, at least within religion, speaking to a religious people, it should be like our objective shouldn't be to hide and to, just let's keep it in ourselves and let's just hide from the light, right? Let's just keep our kids in our little private home schools and keep them safe from the world. It's like, no, that's not what we're meant to do at all. And I think people who do that are just kind of weak Christians because they don't have the power to refute or think about their faith and they just accept it for what it is. And if you don't challenge your faith and wrestle with it, I mean, it's not really a living, active faith. It's going to be a pretty passive faith. So I think it's important that we, if you are religious, you should be wrestling with God most of the time. Like I think that's kind of an important key to religion. And you can kind of see it in that like modern American Protestants and all that. You have like the skinny jeans preacher phenomena, which is just so fucking cringe. It's like, come on. Like, have some reverence.
Wait, I know prosperity churches, but what's the skinny jeans preacher?
Yeah, so there's like a phenomenon going on where it's like, you have a lot of these lay people and they'll just they pretty much teach, they do church like it's a small lecture hall. And they like just talk about the Bible for an hour and there's almost no reverence and they sing in the end and that's that. And it's like all poppy and stuff and they have, it literally looks like a modern classroom essentially. And it's like, well, that's not what church is supposed to be, dude. Like the whole skinny jeans.
Bread maker's coming on.
Oh, interesting. Well,
So you got your wish, Amber.
Okay, so but I guess we should wait for Reaper to join in, but
yeah, I'm gonna be right back. I have to take care of something.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry, I'm late.
What's up, man? So, one second, let's just change what music is. All right, what was I was talking about? I wasn't really listening because I was getting Breadmaker on.
I think we were talking about religious schooling and how trying to protect your children from other viewpoints for religious purposes just makes them weaker in their faith. And then that sort of segued into talking about skinny jeans preachers, which seem to be ones that...
How did we get to skinny jeans?
I think he was speaking about it as...
No, it's like it was the name of a phenomena, like skinny jeans preacher, which is like basically like but I forgot how did we get to it, but it's basically like a preacher that's like very hip and like modern and trying to appeal to kids nowadays and shit like that.
Well, like that video rapping for Jesus.
I think
yes, but not
less
this.
fashionable. That sounds sort of cringe, but I I think he brought it up just to mention the idea of people who have what he feels is a weak sort of faith. And one example of that would be, as he said, people who just sort of bring people into a hall and read something out of the Bible and talk about it for an hour, and then y'all go home. And there's not a sense of the overwhelming awe of the creator God of the universe staring down at you as you consume the flesh and blood of his only begotten child who was sacrificed upon the altar of the cross in order to bathe the sin away from your disgusting souls. If you've just got a guy in skinny jeans who's like, and the Bible says this, and then people go home, you don't really have that sense of awe, is the feeling I got, and I would like to know if that's, well, I guess Thomas just probably got back now and didn't hear half of what I said, but,
Personally, feel like
I was talking about how my own interpretation of your problems with the skinny jeans preachers is that it doesn't really get into the weight of religion. It sounded like that was your criticism, in that it's sort of just like read the Bible and say something and have like a little talk, as opposed to witness the glory of the creator of the universe, whose only begotten son was sacrificed so that you might live without sin and, commune with him. You shall, by consuming his flesh and drinking his blood every Sunday, in order to become one with the soul and body of Christ in communion. And that's a lot more heavy. And for people that feel it, definitely you feel it more than just like, let's read this anecdote from the Bible.
Yeah. I mean, no, I 100% agree with what you said. There should be like a reverence to it. You know what I mean? Like, if you actually really and truly believe that there's a God and his son died on the cross for you and all this stuff, like, I would expect your ceremony and stuff and talking about it to be a little more formal, At least go up there, nice, dress shirt, button down, looking nice and whatever. But this whole skinny jeans preacher phenomenon where it's kind of like, we're talking about God and something very important and something that should be revered and that's holy, and you're just kind of casual about it. It's the same phenomena as like some churches, they have like a guitar or something, and the rule of thumb is if you wouldn't do it at the cross, don't do it here. But yeah, there's just like a lack of reverence, and I'm very much against a lukewarm religion where it's like, hey guys, let's just talk about the Bible. It's like, religion's hard, dude. Like, it's kind of hard to be a Christian. It should be hard. It's supposed to be kind of a challenge. But, you gain a lot from it. You can orient yourself in the world. You're good with God, you're faithful and all these wonderful blessings.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, same. Cos, I was actually going to ask your opinion on what do you think of people who claim to be Christian while not following their teaching? So, for example, I know a guy who claims to be Protestant, but we all just take the piss out of him, really, because he completely fails to follow any of the morals of the Bible or any of that stuff. And I was curious, what's your opinion of people like that then?
Yeah, I actually read about it in the Bible fairly recently. Jesus says something about this, and it's essentially something along the lines of, it's on the lines of something like, for people like that, it's like, he comes up with a story. It's like, imagine a master leaves his home and he leaves some people to watch, right? And he gives orders for them to, keep watch for him. And so all of them fall asleep, right? And he comes back and he asks everyone, did you know about my orders? And, the people who say yes, he beats severely. The master beats severely. And the people who didn't know, he doesn't beat as hard. He beats fairly lightly. And so essentially what's meant to be said through that is like, if you know the word and you're not living it, you're gonna get shit on. You know what I mean? And
yeah, God
does not like that. But if you don't know the word and you didn't live it, it's like, yeah, that's bad. It is objectively bad. Yep. But you're not quite gonna get hurt as severely because like, what were you supposed to do, right? I mean, yeah, next time listen to the master. But like, if you know what the master wants and you choose not to follow it, you're gonna get fucking dunked on. Like, it's going to be a bad time for you.
Yeah, I get that. I'm probably going to mention that next time we're taking the piss out of him, honestly. Cheers for that.
I'll send you the Bible verses for
All right,
second.
cheers.
But
Yeah.
it's one of the parables, so
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
there's a lot of parables that definitely go on the aspects of professed faith versus works, and no, Jesus definitely wants you to have works and faith, and just saying I'm a Christian, at least according to the what I've read in the Gospels, didn't really have too much traffic with Jesus.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Yeah, cheers for that. I don't know if he's gonna be best pleased to hear this, but I don't really care.
Correct. Yeah, root out weak Christians, dude. I encourage it. To break him or make him a Christian. I definitely encourage that, and I encourage people to challenge Christians.
Yeah, he's not going to become a Christian. He's basically Orange left, so.
Oh no. Oh god. People who say Jesus was a socialist. Yikes.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
we enjoy
he was
making
just
fun of him.
essentially
Well,
hippie.
I'm not going to say Jesus was a socialist. I am going to say that he literally told people that they shouldn't go to work, that if they try to worship God and care about money, they're serving mammon and God at the same time, and they'll learn to love one and hate the other. That he, the famous one about the rich man through the eye of a needle, or the camel through the eye of a needle, is the chances of a rich man getting into heaven. Jesus was pretty clear. If you're spending your life earning money, don't. Which I think is a pretty hard thing to hear in the modern era. Like, if you meet some dude that lives out on a farm and prays every day and just makes vegetables and eats them and worships God, like, that dude's getting into heaven.
Cheers.
Rest of us, maybe not.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, I hope we all go to heaven. I really do. Like, every one of us, like, every human alive, I really do hope we all get to heaven. I hope we're all there.
Thomas? Like, that's the thing. I think that shows you're a good Christian, because there's too many Christians with a lot of hate in their hearts. They justify.
I've got to go for a little bit. I'm just going to mute myself. I might not be back by the time you're done.
Sure.
So okay. I'll be back in 5 minutes or so. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
But no, I want to give you props, Thomas. It sounds like you do try to walk the walk, and I think that despite all of my disagreements with organized religion and religion, especially in the public's or the political sphere, I respect people that do hew to the virtues of their religion, as opposed to succumbing to the negative tendencies of them. And so, good on you.
Yeah. No, I do. I mean, I don't know if you're gonna make it. I mean, I think I know. Essentially, I think this is kind of one of the pivotal points that I got explained to me during my confirmation process. But it's not that we know the only way to get to heaven. It's just that as Catholics, we know a guaranteed way to get to heaven. God's mercy is infinite, and He could do whatever the hell He wants. He's the king here. But there's a definite way to get there. And, that's walking the faith.
Sounds good. Though, do you mind if I introduce like a new question I wanted to ask about the relationship between religion and, politics, religion and laws, right?
Sure.
Because I feel that most of us, unless we've got any monarchists in here, or fascists or something like that, do sort of accept that if we live in a democracy and that democracy consists of multiple different religious groups, then we do have to have a certain level of secularity in democracy in order for it to if we're into classical liberalism and the dreams of the founders of America, having a healthy democracy that doesn't just say, okay, everybody who doesn't believe this thing, you just suffer. Secularity in democracy does seem to be a pretty strong concept. And I think, if anyone has any objections to that, I'd like to hear it. But I had a sort of follow-up question after that. But if you want to say something about that concept right now, I would, want to hear like what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that secularity and democracy is kind of important, but I think that you should still vote with what you think is right. Like, for example, right? I'll take, for instance, abortion in America, right? I'm against it because oh, sorry, Paliacki. Looks like our off left has left. Very sad.
Take
But
care,
like,
Spopey.
but you know, I think that you should vote with your heart and what's right and wrong. But I also think you should try your best to allow that to be reconciled with secularism and, allow people to be people and have their own free will. I think you should.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, for instance, if somebody came to me and said, hey, I think we should just legalize murder because you could do what you want, I'd be like, haha, no. And that's kind of my view on abortion. It's like, haha, no. I just don't believe it. But we should, to the best of our abilities, while doing our best to keep the dignity of people, and we should make sure to also vote with our hearts. Like, keep the dignity of people, let them do what they want, but we should also vote with our hearts and like not allow things that are wrong. Like, for instance, the death penalty. I hate that. Why can the state kill people? It's horrible. You should never kill people. I'll gladly walk on the streets with people to get rid of that. That's fine.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I also have another
I totally agree with you there, and I think that's. Oh yeah.
I have a side note to say about that. About the death penalty and all of that. That it all ties back to the science debate that we talked about before, which is something is considered sinful, but it does progress society and science overall. Do you believe that should happen? Like I said before, even like we had to dig up corpses, and perform fake surgeries on them to learn about modern medicine. I would like to know Thomas' perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think something should be done to progress us in our modern science, but I don't believe that generally you can walk forward with modern science and stuff super well, while also doing things that are unethical and wrong. I think that, maybe eventually we'll find that it's fine, but I just don't see that bearing too much fruit, in terms of like, discoveries and stuff.
Right.
I just don't see it bearing too much fruit.
If let's say that there was evidence that like if the death penalty existed, then it doesn't exist here, but I know that it exists in other places in the world. But if there was like clear evidence that would essentially improve the world, maybe lessen the amount of world hunger, but you did have to kill like 10,000 people. Would that be moral? Would the person that like approved that go to heaven or?
Yeah, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. It's not right to kill people. It's not right to hurt people, and it never will be. I mean, the dignity of human life is pretty much absolute. And, I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is, right? I donate and I try to help people to the best of my abilities. I give food to the homeless when I can and stuff. Like, I really and truly believe that the dignity of the human life is absolute. And I think, anybody who's a Christian should maintain that. From natural birth or natural conception to final death, natural death. I think it's absolute. And I think no one save for God has the right to revoke a life.
Yeah, that sounds fair.
Also, I haven't heard from Reaper. What's
yeah. Let's bring in Reaper.
Yeah, I've kind of just been quiet because I have a tendency to interrupt things and be a very chaotic mess of a person.
No worries. I just want to get you. I mean, I haven't heard you for a minute, so I'm like, you're the extra spice. Come on, bring it on.
Yeah. Wait, what was the topic again? Religion? What were we on?
It's religion. And I think I heard that you're a Asatru.
Asatru.
Nice.
It's hard to pronounce. There's no list for it, or I'm dumb. I haven't found it. But fuck, I already forgot.
Yeah,
I came in with no preparation.
it's fine.
Yeah, I don't
I
think
mean,
any of us prepared too much, but for anybody here who isn't aware of and if
I'm
my
back.
if my pronunciation's wrong, I apologize. The Satru religion, that's the revival of Norse mythological religion and the worshipping of the Norse pantheon, as well as I believe that sort of revering of traditional Norse virtues is also part of that religious
Yes.
tradition. Yeah.
So essentially,
Are we
if
finally talking
I'm
about
just going to go
paganism?
on a rant. The virtues are pretty much be brave, hold grudges against people for some reason. I'm not exactly sure why that one's a virtue. Fuck, I feel like I'm forgetting one.
I think being
Oh,
generous
okay.
to your own people is one. I mean, when reading about
Yeah,
Norse lords, giving well to their own kind.
especially if they were capable. Something. Yeah, if you lose one of your eyes, I think it symbolizes your connection to Odin and the knowledge that comes with it. So that's an oddity, but I can see it.
Yeah, but that makes sense from
Also,
the stories because so remember because Odin gave it up his eye to gain all the knowledge he has, so it makes sense
yeah,
with the stories in Norse mythology.
because rulers with only one eye have seen battle. They're wise because they managed to survive somehow. And you also got your mythological connections,
mhm.
and then there's the scholars and bookkeepers, your poem people, which there's a special name for, but I can't remember it, and I'm
Skald?
really far away from my books because I'm not even close to home right now. But that's essentially the virtues. Cowards are still hated, and I heavily do not like cowardly people.
Let's go. Based.
If you're gonna run away from
Very
battle,
brief.
at least fucking make sure you run towards them.
Yeah.
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 I feel like I'm having a fucking scatterbrain instant. I can't remember shit when I need to.
It's all right. It'll come to you. Don't worry.
Eventually.
But yeah, I think it's interesting because I think a proper Christian teaching holds most of those, except for the grudges. We're not really meant to do that, but fine.
Well, to think, way back when we were still tribals up in Scandinavia, people were constantly raiding each other, so people would form long-lasting grudges to try and avenge their loved ones that were taken or killed.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
Their
I'm,
massive food stocks that got raided.
yeah, I'm not. I mean, look, there's a reason why that emotion exists. I mean, and that phenomena is, but yeah, it's just one of our differences. That's fine. I don't deny the wisdom of your religion. I don't think it's complete, which I think you might think of me too, because I'm a trad cath, but
Well, yeah, now you got the modern day true, which I think is just called heathenry now. I think that's
Let's
the
go.
most wide use term for it. I still use the old name because it sounds cooler.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I don't know, feels right. But most of the modern day religion, we've had to cut out most of the really illegal stuff, namely human sacrifice when things get really, really bad.
Right.
We still do animals to celebrate good health, good harvest, give thanks to the gods for their blessings. But then we also have our feasts, which are practically every Saturday, which are nice, but I wish I was kind of home to, do my job at that.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much all I have to say for now.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Never met a proper pagan. I mean, or Asaturian, a believer in.
Sorry to do this to you, Thomas, but I'm afraid paganism sounds way more based than a Catholic. I can't say that word, but than being a Catholic. I'm sorry, it just sounds more based to me.
I mean, no, and look, the truth of the matter is, I do recognize that I think it feels more naturally correct, but I think, the virtues of temperance, justice, and mercy are very important to our modern world to kind of keep the gears turning. I think they're very important, and without them, I think our modern world would kind of fall apart.
Then what the fuck is going on? Because there ain't no justice.
Yeah, there is no justice. That's right. I mean, like, dude, look at the state of America. You have no temperance, no chastity, no justice.
That's not just
know,
America.
I
That's
live
everywhere.
here. It sucks.
Yeah.
But then again, I
Yeah.
do live in probably one of the nicest states that isn't filled with people and no one remembers.
I mean, a lot of our problems can be straight up traced, in my opinion, to a lack of Christian virtues. A lot of the Christian virtues, and a lot of the pagan virtues too. We do intersect to some degree, but like, I think most of it can be traced to straight up just Christian virtues that are like gone.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Honestly, I'm not a Christian, but like the reason why a lot of my friends think I am is because I do agree with quite a lot of the virtues, just down to the fact that I think they are mostly good ways to live your life. And I think I completely agree that people have just completely abandoned that. And he just left. Oh, homie, okay. But yeah, I think it's just down to the fact that I think because atheism's been on the rise so much, I think people have taken it too far, where now they're just abandoning all Christian.
They're just living hedonistically, no restraint.
Yeah,
it's shameful.
absolutely. Yeah,
It really is.
Yes, and I think part of the reason that is happening is down to the fact that people want to abandon religion and Christianity without realizing that just because Christianity says this way you should live your life doesn't mean that's automatically bad because it's Christian. Again, I'm not a Christian, but I think a lot of the virtues are very good ways to live your life. And following those virtues doesn't automatically make you a Christian. I think a lot of people don't get that. But then as well, it's just at the same time that quite a lot of society encourages them to act hedonistically, which is just not a good way to live your life. And you can just see that. But I love how nearly every episode that we've got into people living their lives hedonistically.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of our signs of decay, right? Like,
100%.
We kind of jumped from the not super perfect ship of religion, right? And we jumped into the sea of darkness and chaos. I mean, it's really not good.
We come out the other end, it's a fucking miracle.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, look, I definitely advocate for a Christian Catholic thing, but I mean, come on, any old religion would help here because we're totally like going monkey mode and in our highly specialized civilized society. I mean, we can't do that. We're not going to last too long.
I mean, I feel like these sort of ideas have been going around for thousands of years, and we're still here. And even if you go back to the Romans or the ancient Greeks, they were still talking about moral decay and civilization collapsing, but we are still here. Everything worked out in the end.
Yeah, they
Where's the Roman
also
Empire
went through a collapse. Yeah, they went through a collapse and led to the Dark Ages, which were not a fun time to live in. Cholera, typhoid.
Yes, but we survived.
Also, you got Vikings up on the north coast.
Yeah,
we're just doing what we do.
Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, once these religions and these systems that hold the societies together, and this is part of the reason I very much advocate for religion, is once those cements kind of fall away, it just falls apart. Like, what are we gonna do?
Yeah, I know it's become a kind of cliche at this point to say it because so many people are saying it. But I think we're currently witnessing the fall of Rome just with Western civilization. And unless this ship gets turned right the fuck around real soon, which I don't think it will.
No, it won't.
It won't, exactly. We're fucked.
If we do somehow turn it around, boy, a lot of things are going to be flipped, and people are going to have a fucking riot over it.
Well, yeah, I mean, the first thing me and my cool friends are gonna do if we get in power is we're gonna turn Reddits into the modern Rush and Redditors. I mean, come on, like the default villain of every story is gonna be some Redditor, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
No, we're gonna me and my cool friends, we're gonna take them out. Get rid of all this degeneracy in society because it's just that it's degenerating it.
I don't think it is hopeless. I think I think the pandemic was
There's
actually
still some hope, not much
Yes.
though.
I wouldn't say I'm blackpilled. I think the pandemic was very good at red pill. I know the red pill thing's become almost like a joke at this point, but I think the pandemic was very good at red pilling a lot of people, and a lot of people are starting to wake up to this. There's enough people talking about it where it's becoming a noticeable thing for a lot of people.
Yeah, if you do want to see the decay of everything, I think there is a subreddit for it. What is it? r/collapse? It's interesting because you can see a lot of people going into scientific and political explanations of a lot of things. They also cover economic shortages, climate issues, fucking other countries. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear. I mean, the virtue of bravery was pretty much lost with the whole coronavirus pandemic. I mean, like, think of how many people were just terrified. And yes, I understand if you're like immunocompromised, like, yeah, you should be scared and you should be well tempered about the COVID virus. But the bravery of us to face things in the face and really take.
Are we about to go into COVID?
Actually, I
Yes.
think we should cut this. I think we should cut this part off so we don't get destroyed by YouTube. That'd be optimal.
Nah, that's fine. No, I think we
Oh,
should.
wait,
yeah.
there's an archive for this on YouTube somewhere.
Well, I mean,
Okay.
we do.
No,
touch
100%
upon
think we
it,
should keep it in.
I don't think it's bannable. I mean, telling people not to be scared is not
Yeah.
a bannable offense. Come on, if
Yeah.
they ban
No,
the
I think-
Tax has already said he's going to keep in my anti-Semitism.
Oh God. Yeah. I mean, look.
No.
We're gonna. And I also denounce any anti-Semitism. It's cringe. But
Yeah.
I don't.
Thanks, Thomas.
regardless, I think we needed to be brave in those moments, and we needed to, do
Instead,
what
we're
had
just
to be
hiding
done,
away
and
in the shells of our homes, being
yeah, and now
cowards.
now our supply chain is kind of fucked, and now there's
Kinda.
a lot of problems. There's that now we're gonna start seeing some very heavy problems because we were scared of and look, I understand our initial caution was warranted, but after a while, there comes a point where
Was it?
I mean, look,
Well, depends. You got the gray window, as people call it, when it comes to a potential new global pandemic.
Sorry,
Are you going to risk having all your population die, or are you going to risk losing a chunk of your economy over safety reasons?
yeah, I mean, but what we had was a bit much, and the whole politicization of it was horrible, and I think it was just the wrong thing to happen, and it really just cocked us all up.
Can I give a controversial opinion on the pandemic? We did not go hard enough. We took a half measure. We went for lockdowns, half-assed lockdowns, and ended up spreading anyway. I feel like if the entirety of the world went for lockdown like China's, we would not be in this position.
Yeah, if we're on the topic of lockdowns, isn't
did I say
Shanghai
that-
completely...
I mean, look, with lockdowns, I kind of agree. You kind of have to be all in or not do it at all. I think what we did was very half-ass. Like, with those types of things, there are certain things in politics and in policy that you have to
Are we
be
talking about
all in.
lockdowns?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be all in or you don't do it at all, right? You just sit in the middle, straddling. You get nothing done, and you shit on your economy. It's really horrible.
Can I get a moment to give my strong feelings about lockdowns?
Sure.
I believe that the COVID lockdowns were in fact become the biggest disaster in the maybe in the entire 21st century. They were that fucking atrocious. Like the
It's really
all
early in
around
the
effects they are
century.
having.
Maybe we're speaking too soon.
Yeah.
No,
you maybe
I
speak
doubt
too soon.
anything. No, I doubt anything could be as terrible as that.
Just jinxed
Yeah.
it.
And don't get me
I
wrong,
mean,
there are some pretty terrible things. I mean, unless like the World Economic Forum actually takes over, COVID lockdowns the worst without a doubt. Like, Jesus fucking Christ, they were terrible. And they were an absolute mistake, and they should never have been done at all. And that's not even like the only part of COVID that was just like their response that was just absolutely awful. Like the flag just tyranny with how the vaccine rollout was just atrocious as well. There are so many things that could be criticized for how they treated it, and it will go down as a fucking disaster.
Yeah, well, hindsight is 2020, so you also have to consider that. However, that doesn't excuse bad policy and bad, decisions that were made at the time. I mean, there were bad decisions everywhere, bad decisions on both sides, I think, and we just weren't all in or all out, and now we're kind of paying the price for it.
But all in is
6
what
months.
China's currently doing.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think all in is constitutional, so. It probably shouldn't have. Yeah, it probably shouldn't have happened because But like I said, hindsight's 2020, and who knows?
Yeah, but from the start, I'd been saying they shouldn't have done it.
Yeah, it's true.
Monkeypox. It's just gonna be a thing to scare people. I doubt monkeypox will mean anything.
No, I mean, I hope it does.
I've seen 20 articles that's like, this new virus is spreading quickly, could be the next COVID.
Oh, so we're not worrying about the liver disease?
In Greece, we have promoted another disease. It's a fungus type thing, I think, that exists in hospitals and has killed like a lot of people. Has a 6-7% mortality rate. But it also does attack immunocompromised people, so that might be, it might have a different death rate if it were to go out into normal population.
The one I'm curious about is somehow AIDS is back. Did you see that in Amsterdam they found what they were calling super AIDS, and over here in the UK,
super AIDS.
What do you mean?
Super
in
AIDS.
A place of scum, villainy, and hedonism, there's super AIDS? Oh, color me surprised.
Oh no!
Yeah, but
what a horrible disaster! Anyway, let's hope it burns out.
like here in the UK as well, they were telling people to get tested for AIDS, which is just, what the fuck are you on? I have my own suspicion.
The bot crashed, so apologies for the anticlimactic ending. We don't have the audio; it's missing. I've swapped recording software, so this issue should not happen again, though we're going to have to learn how to use the other one. But for now, I'm aware it's a anticlimactic ending, and I am sorry about that. You really missed out. It had a really good ending, but we don't have the audio to send you, which is a shame, and I'm sorry about that. But if you've been listening so far, I just want to say thank you for doing so. It really helps us out. But sorry about losing the audio. This should not happen ever again. But yeah, thank you for watching.
This may be hard to hear, since you don't know how to be sincere, like you really care about what people think. And so that's why you lip sync all the talking points and trendy buzzwords. It's dehumanizing, it's so absurd that you think that anybody cares, cause nobody cares about your politics, your taste in music, your regurgitated takes on everything. The clothes you wear or the food you eat, please shut the fuck up, it means nothing to me. It means nothing to me, it means nothing to me. It means nothing to me, it means nothing to me. This may be hard to hear, but all the bands you like are pretty